You're tuning in to the Black Hollywood Live Network, featuring news, interviews, and commentary on all things Black Hollywood. Hollywood redefined. From Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is Black Hollywood Live. Justice is served. Featuring the week's roundup and commentary on legal news. Black Hollywood Live. Hollywood redefined.
You're listening to Black Hollywood Live.
And now, the host for Black Hollywood Live, Justice is Served.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Justice is Served, where we bring you the latest in legal news. I am your host, Rahwa Ghebre-Ab, and I am joined today by a very special guest co-host, Sara Azari. Sara, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rahwa.
Why don't you tell the people a little bit about your background, a little bit about yourself?
I have a state and federal practice here in Los Angeles, so I defend the accused, people that are accused of crimes, both in state courts and federal courts, anywhere from a misdemeanor to a felony, and it's a pleasure to be here.
It is fantastic to have you here. We have a lot to cover today in today's show, a lot going on, pretty full docket. We're going to be talking about Donald Sterling, who has been in the news nonstop lately, and he really shows no signs of stopping. We'll also check in on the latest with the criminal cases surrounding former NFL player Aaron Hernandez and also actor Michael Jace. Of course, we'll be touching base on the Oscar Pistorius trial and closing up with a discussion of misogyny and mental health regarding the unfortunate and very tragic shootings up outside of Santa Barbara last weekend. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and start with our case of the week, Donald Sterling. So much has happened, not even in the past 2 hours on this case, that it's kind of difficult to know where to start, but I will start at the beginning, and the beginning being Tuesday. So on Tuesday, news broke that LA Clippers owner Donald Sterling had no intentions of selling his team and that he was going to fight to the bloody end. That was a quote from his attorney, Max Blecker. From what we understand, Mr. Blecker told ESPN on Tuesday that Sterling had responded very forcefully to the NBA's charges to terminate his ownership due to the recent unfortunate recordings that came out of Mr. Sterling. Ms. Sterling is calling the NBA's penalties against him draconian and saying that the proceedings against him are a sham. He was fined, and he was also essentially booted from ever attending any NBA events again. And in the documents that were sent to the NBA offices on Tuesday, Sterling denied every allegation. And his attorney said pretty forcefully that everything that the NBA has done is illegal. It's not going to hold up in court. And he just kind of went on and blustered a little bit. And he thinks that this is a blatant invasion of constitutional rights. I don't know if I agree with that, but Sterling said that his client is actually Sterling's attorney said that his client is planning to fight the charges to the bitter end, which is a very different story from what was painted earlier in the week or at the end of last week, because apparently news had also broken that Sterling and his wife had negotiated to allow her to negotiate the sale of the Clippers franchise. She'd retained Bank of America to help sell the franchise, and her attorney came out, Shelley Sterling's attorney came out saying Donald Sterling has authorized Shelley in writing to negotiate the sale of the LA Clippers. So I don't even know what's going on here. It seemed like neither party was on the same page, and now we have news as to why that may not be. News broke last night that Donald Sterling has been deemed mentally incapacitated, possibly due to Alzheimer's. That has not yet been confirmed, and at this time his attorney is saying that they are going to not only fight that ruling but also continue to fight against the sale. All this while reports of the team already having been sold to the highest bidder are floating around out there. So
I'm not even sure if he's on the same page with his own lawyer, frankly. But Rahwa, that's right, and I think that what happened earlier on in this week, where we were led to believe that the team's going to be sold, that Shelley Sterling has the authority to sell the team. It's a bit confusing because suddenly now he is vehemently fighting the allegations that are brought by the NBA pending this this hearing on June 3rd in New York, the termination hearing. And essentially his response to the NBA is comprised of 4 arguments. The first argument is that this recording violates his constitutional right because it's a violation of his privacy. It's an illegal recording, and therefore the NBA has no evidence. Well, the problem is he's in a different playground. He's not in court.
Right.
California law doesn't necessarily apply. I mean, there is a law in California that says that recordings of conversations have to be consented to by both parties to the conversation. But in this case, you're dealing with a private entity, being the league, being the NBA. And so he's in a different playground with a different set of rules. Also, the NBA Constitution apparently cites a lot to New York law. So even if state law were to apply, it would be New York law, not California law, presumably. And in New York is a one-sided state, so only one person needs to consent to the recording, and you don't require the two-party thing. So that's his first argument, which I think is a little weak. And the second argument is with respect to Article 13D of the NBA Constitution, which says that the owners of teams cannot that they need to comply with their obligations to the association, the members, and the players. And it's a very broad statute. So the NBA is saying you're in violation of that because you're doing something very unethical. It's very inappropriate to make these comments. And Sterling's response, and I agree with you, is he almost minimizes what he said. It's like, okay, well, it was inappropriate, but it didn't really do any harm. So let's just
look at all these other NBA players and owners.
Look at Kobe, who was only fined $100,000. Poor me, And so he's reading that statute very narrowly and saying that only applies to financial obligations of the owners and not to their ethical duties and such. The third argument that he's making in his response is that he doesn't have, and this is kind of comical to me, he says he has no way of confirming the material harm because he can't get to his offices at the Staples Center in order to do the math and see whether there's really a decline in the sale of the merchandise and the season tickets.
Pretty creative.
Yeah, it is very creative. I don't think it passes muster, though. And then finally, he's saying, what you brought up, but the disparity of the punishment between what, maybe Kobe got for the, sexually inappropriate comment that he made to a gay referee versus what he's getting here. And it'll be interesting to see because, frankly, I think if he's deemed incompetent and he has a conservator, then I don't think he really has a say in the sale. And, somebody will be signing the dotted line on his behalf. But it's just very interesting to me because I don't even know if his own attorney is on the same page.
What concerns me about how we've seen his attorney in the media is that he is just... He doesn't seem to acknowledge the fact that Donald Sterling is giving very different, he's giving different responses. Initially, okay, he'd agreed to allow his wife to sell ownership of to sell and transfer ownership of the Clippers. And then he came out and said, the attorney said, well, he was just really stressed out then. Now he's feeling a bit more feisty. So now he wants to fight. And, and I'm not sure about that. Okay, so what does your client want? I guess he could make the argument that, his client has changed his mind and his client is more than within his right to do that. But it's when he said something to the effect of, I don't know what agreement Donald Sterling has with his wife. Well, why don't you know? You're his attorney. And so something about that seems very, something about that
disingenuous.
Right. And I don't know how do you think that plays?
Well, I don't know, but here's my thought. My thought is the longer this, you've got all these issues. You've got the property issues. You've got the community property issues with Shelley and him. I don't know if there's a divorce pending or if it's a legal separation or what. But you've got those issues. You've got the contractual issues and the trust issues because it's actually family trust that owns the Clippers. And so at the end of the day, I think the longer that this team is tied up in court over the sale, whether to sell and who can sell, and I think that the value of the team is going to diminish. And so, my advice, if I was representing Sterling, would be take the $2 billion from the former Microsoft executive, pay the 3 to 5 in the capital gain taxes, and move on, and at least at least I think he's taking a step towards redeeming himself too. This whole digging into this further, I think, is just does more damage.
It really seems like if it's not a mental incapacitation issue, it's definitely an ego issue at somewhere in here, because
his attorney called it his legacy.
Yes, his legacy.
I call it his ego.
Yeah, he said, who cares about $2 billion? Right. I mean, he's already a billionaire. He doesn't need it, and so you can send a little bit of that over my way. Yeah. But I have differing thoughts. A few weeks ago, Carl Douglas, who represented Elgin Baylor, the former general manager, in a lawsuit against Donald Sterling, said that he thinks what is going to happen is that Shelley Sterling and Donald Sterling are kind of going to work together to run up the value of the team. And even just a few weeks ago, news outlets were valuing the Clippers at maybe 1.2, 1.3 billion. Now,
the bid started at $1 billion.
Right, and now look, we're at 2. So I'm wondering if maybe the strategy is working.
I absolutely, I thought the same thing. I thought that a little bit of this sort of change of heart, what they're calling his change of heart in the media, I thought that it's a little bit of puffery, perhaps, because we all want something that we can't get, and we'll pay more for it. Right. So, to me, at first, it appeared to be a little bit of, making it even, it was something to get higher bids for. But it'll be interesting to see if I'm very interested in his mental state and how that's going to play out in the sale.
Yeah, one last thing on this, I think, hopefully, is if indeed he's found to be mentally incapacitated, that's confirmed, and he fights against that and he loses, Shelley Sterling, his wife, even though they've been separated for some time now, is going to have the rights to sell the team. I'm wondering, do you think that will extend at all to anything having to do with the divorce, and if it will impact divorce proceedings at all? I personally don't think they're going to get divorced. I think they're going to stay together forever. I
think there's so much wealth involved that they are going to stay together
just for the sake of money.
For the sake of keeping it fiscally together.
Right. Her attorney said, or she said in a statement actually through her attorney, that she'd been advised almost 20 years ago to just hold off on divorcing him. And I'm like, okay, hold off, but for how long? Hey, maybe you can just stay in this state of limbo separation forever. Hey,
right. Yep.
So we will definitely see how this goes. As of right now, CBSSports.com is reporting that Donald Sterling is planning on filing a $1 billion with a B dollar lawsuit against the NBA, stemming from damages suffered due to the charges against him. And we will see how this plays out, because news is literally changing by the minute, and we will be on top of it and keep you guys posted. So we'll just go ahead and move right along. On the docket, we have a few interesting cases to touch base on today. First being Aaron Hernandez, a former NFL player for the New England Patriots. He has been he's been a topic on our show, many a show, and I think the most recent issue is a fascinating one. So Aaron Hernandez was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder based on 2012 killings of 2 men in Boston. And he's also in jail awaiting trial in a separate 2013 slaying of another person. And so it just seems like bodies are coming out of the woodwork for this guy. But with respect to the 2012 killings of these two young men, now news has come out that prosecutors are seeking the help of tattoo artists who may have inked Aaron Hernandez after the homicides. Now, when I first heard that news, I thought, okay, would he have tattooed clues as to what he'd done, or maybe almost like bragging rights? And I thought nobody would be that dumb, but then you never know with people. What were your thoughts when you heard this? For
defense attorneys, and I don't handle gang cases as much anymore, and that's where tattoos are very prevalent.
Right.
But I have before, and for us, it's definitely not aesthetic. It's problematic because the prosecution wants to introduce tattoos as evidence of propensity to commit a crime. Especially in gang cases, the rank in the gang, the number of victims killed, all of these are are encoded in these tattoos on the defendant. And so the prosecution always wants to admit the tattoos into evidence. And as defense attorneys, we try to keep them out. So the issue really turns on the probative value that the tattoos have in comparison to their inherent prejudicial effect before a jury. So in this case, I thought it was interesting because clearly, I mean, we don't have a lot of information about the types of tattoos that the authorities have identified on Aaron Hernandez's body, and what sort of what suspicion they have about some of we don't know what these images are. We don't know what the query is and what they're going to ask these tattoo artists if and when they come forward for their statements. But whatever it is, it's going to play out in court where the DA is going to say these are relevant or you know, they're additional circumstantial evidence for the crimes. They connect the dots, you know, in relation to the other evidence that they have. And the defense attorney is going to want to try to keep it out and argue that there's some other neutral, non-criminal significance to these tattoos. So an example that I have in my experience, and there's actually been published cases about this, is teardrops, tattoos of teardrops. So teardrops, prosecution always argues that these are indicative of the number of victims killed by the gang member. And the defense argument is that, no, these are just, you know, the loss of loved ones, you know, the sadness that the individual is experiencing, and that's all that it signifies. There's no criminal meaning to this. So it is interesting, but I think what recently the authorities mentioned that they're now going to expand their search for any tattoo artists who have ever inked Hernandez, not just in that 1 year period. And I think that's going to be a little bit more problematic.
He's got a lot of tattoos.
He's got a lot of tattoos, and also I think, you know, then you're dealing with the relevance issues,
right,
and the probative value of the tattoos. But it's like any other document. If it's relevant, if it's probative, and the probative value exceeds the prejudicial or the prejudice, then, you know, it comes in. It can come in.
I'll be really interested to see how this plays out, because recently we interviewed the authors of an article or an op-ed that was published in the New York Times about the use of rap lyrics in criminal convictions. And so I guess this may be something along those same lines. And,
absolutely.
you know, even though I think maybe as attorneys, logically we think, okay, you know,
First Amendment,
artistic expression, exactly. But I mean, juries can be swayed by any little thing. So, yeah, we'll definitely see how this plays out. We don't have a lot of information. We do know that the tattoos, or he was tattooed, Hernandez, in cities all over the country.
Right.
So
different
Palm Beach,
states,
LA.
Yeah, and I think it's the timing that also matters. You know, if there was the slang or the shooting of the two guys he met at a bar in Boston, and then within a couple of days he got a certain image tattooed on him, then, you know, depending on what that image is, there could be some relevance.
Yeah, we will.
Significance.
We will wait to see, you know, what turns up and how this turns out. But he has been in the news like every other week, much like Donald Sterling. So we will continue to keep our eyes on that. Next, we'll be touching base on the actor Michael Jace. He was an actor on the show The Shield. He was arrested after his wife's shooting death. He was recently arrested on suspicion of shooting and killing his wife, April Jace. And he played, actually, I guess this is ironic, a police officer on the popular FX television series. And he called police last Monday night and told law enforcement that he had, quote, pulled the trigger, end quote, and that I shot my wife, end quote. And we really haven't gotten a lot of information since then. I mean, he told the 911 operator that his wife had been shot in their LA home by him, and very unfortunate. It appears that his two children were also there and witnessed the shooting. So with this little amount of information that we have here, I mean, to any person who would say, okay, this is pretty open and shut. He admitted he shot his wife, and they've got it on the recording. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes and no. I mean, I agree. It's so tragic, especially if these young kids witness the shooting, which seems to be the case. The issue here is well, one thing is there is no issue in terms of we're in the realm of murder, which is California Penal Code Section 187. And the issue is whether whether he's going to get charged for first-degree murder or second-degree murder. Both types of murder require an intent to kill. The difference is first-degree murder is a premeditated, deliberated, plotted killing of another human being. And it also extends to commissions of felonies during which somebody's killed. So I come to your house to rob your house. I have no intention of killing you, but I shoot and kill you accidentally. I'm on the hook for first-degree murder. Second-degree murder is essentially the killing of someone else with malice aforethought. So I call it anything that is not first-degree murder or manslaughter is second-degree murder. And the difference, I think, for Jace is going to be the penalty phase. If he is found guilty, if he's charged with and found guilty of first-degree murder, he could possibly face the death penalty. He's a 50-year-old man. And if he is found guilty, charged with and found guilty of second-degree murder, then he is looking at life in prison, either without parole or with the possibility of parole. But, at the end of the day, no matter how you slice it, he's a 50-year-old guy and it's his life.
Right.
And these kids don't have a mother and they're not going to really see their father unless they visit the jails on the weekends. It's very tragic, but we just don't have enough information to know the circumstances that led to the shooting and how this is going to get charged. I mean, we do know there was some financial troubles and arguments between April Jace and Michael Jace, but it certainly doesn't support manslaughter.
Right. There are also news outlets reporting that and April was actually his second wife.
And there was domestic violence in the first marriage.
And we will see how that turns out, because I'm sure that the authorities will go straight to the first wife, who we've already heard from in these news reports, saying that she was terrified for her life and for that of her son. She has a son with him as well.
That's not going to look good for him in court. Certainly.
It is absolutely not. But you're absolutely right. We don't have enough information right now, so that is another one we will continue to tune into. Final story on the docket, Oscar Pistorius, whose story we have been covering, his trial we've been covering for months now, and it seemed like the case was going to wrap up. The trial has been going on for some time now, and the defense had indicated that they were going to wrap up this week, but now his murder trial has actually been halted. And just to give you a little bit of background for those of you who don't recall, Oscar Pistorius, a famous South African runner with prosthetic legs, actually is on trial right now for the murder of his girlfriend, Reeva Steenkamp, in South Africa in the middle of the night in his South African his home. So Pistorius has been absolutely sick throughout the whole trial. You see him throwing up. He's got he's been having anxiety attacks. Right. A lot of analysts have thought, okay, this guy's putting on. It's difficult to say. He's looking. I'd look like that too.
Pretty genuine.
Yeah, if I was on trial for murder, I'd look like that too. So I get it. But the judge actually announced this past Wednesday that Pistorius is going to have to undergo a 30-day outpatient psychiatric observation at a state mental facility. And this comes at a time when the defense's psychiatrist has testified about diagnosing Pistorius with an anxiety disorder. And she believes that may have contributed to his judgment. Just to recap, the night that his girlfriend was killed, apparently she'd gone to the bathroom in the middle of the night. His story is that he woke up, heard an intruder, didn't look over, didn't see his girlfriend wasn't in the bed, didn't make the connection that she could have been the one in the bathroom, and because he was so terrified due to robberies in the area, he just shot through the door multiple times. And if this anxiety disorder is found to be true, if he's found to really have this mental incapacitation, then the trial is really going to go a number of ways. It could just end right here. What are your
not?
Yeah. What are the outcomes?
Wasn't this on Valentine's Day? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
It was on Valentine's Day.
Pretty horrible Valentine's Day.
Right.
Yeah.
So Pistorius, as a defense attorney, I really appreciate a judge who does the right thing. And I think that at least apparently this judge is doing the right thing. She made a statement saying, this is not about the party's convenience. We're going to trail this, we're going to stop it, we're going to halt it, because there's something up with this defendant and he needs to be evaluated and observed. I don't think that the defense was going down the road of NGI, not guilty by reason of insanity, when they put on this expert. I think they were trying to explain this anxiety disorder that maybe caused this automatic reflex type of behavior, where, you know, as the justification for his shooting and killing his girlfriend. But I don't think they were going down the road of insanity, an insanity defense. However, now this is going to open up his mental health, and it's not by his expert who treated or examined him or evaluated him. It's now by the state hospital. So there's three ways, and I'm not familiar with this jurisdiction, but it appears to be similar to our jurisdiction, our laws. But it appears that, you know, it's gonna go one of three ways. One is where he's going to be declared mentally incapacitated, and if that's the case, then the trial will end with a not guilty by reason of insanity. It could also be that he's not mentally incapacitated, but just diminished. He has diminished capacity, and so if that happens, then the trial will continue to a verdict, and his mental health or his compromised mental health will come into play as a mitigating factor at sentencing. And lastly, it could be that he is found to be completely in perfect mental health, which would be unfortunate for him, because I think then his expert's testimony will be completely canned. So, you know, I do wonder, though, whether the expert's testimony alone would have led this judge to make this ruling.
Right.
I think that this judge has all along observed these very highly emotional breakouts by Pistorius that are unusual, and I think they're pretty real. I don't think it's a show he's putting on. And so I think that the judge, this is sort of the final straw. She's going, wait a minute, there's something going on with this guy that we need to be aware of. And in order for justice to be served, we need to really look into his well-being and see if that's contributed to the crime.
It's difficult to say. I know we're not psychiatrists, so and we're also not there and treating and around Pistorius. But based upon what you've seen so far, what do you think this evaluation is going to come down to, or how in what direction it'll go?
I don't see him as mentally incapacitated, you know, but perhaps this anxiety disorder, whatever it is, to me, it seems like some kind of a post-traumatic stress disorder of category. Again, yeah, we're not. Wish Dr. Drew was here.
I know.
But, you know, but I think that it falls into a category of or a diagnosis that at least will maybe mitigate, you know, his state of mind.
Well, again, we will continue to stay tuned, and in about 30 days, I guess we'll know what happens, because that's how long his treatment is. Final topic of the day: tipping the scales. This story is so sad, and but the discussion that's been generated by it has been fascinating, and I think it's a much needed one. The story coming out of Santa Barbara, or a small community, Isla Vista, I believe is how it's Isla Vista is how it's pronounced, outside of Santa Barbara. Last weekend suffered a horrible tragedy. 22-year-old Elliot Rogers, a man allegedly seeking retribution against women who he said sexually rejected him, went on a killing spree in Isla Vista, killing 6 people and sending 7 people to the hospital with serious gunshot injuries. And three of the those killed were roommates, actually. So that's where the rampage started. Before the mass murders that Rogers allegedly, even though we're fairly certain he did commit, but allegedly committed, he made several YouTube videos where he complained that he was a virgin and that beautiful women wouldn't pay attention to him. I think we actually have a clip of one of these videos. We'll play the first minute and see, minute 10, and see what we have here.
Hi, Elliot Roger here. Well, this is my last video. It all has to come to this. Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity, against all of you. For the last 8 years of my life, ever since I've hit puberty, I've been forced to endure an existence of loneliness, rejection, and unfulfilled desires, all because girls have never been attracted to me. Girls gave their affection and sex and love to other men, but never to me. I'm 22 years old, and I'm still a virgin. I've never even kissed a girl.
So we're not gonna play the whole video. I mean, there's several videos, but that just gives you a little taste of where this guy is coming from, and that is one hurt man. He's also, according to his family, one mentally disturbed man. According to his family, Rogers was seeking psychiatric treatment, but I think the issue that has arisen from this is that many are speaking out, saying, "Look, we can't just call this a mental health issue. It's not, I mean, of course, there are elements of that here, but this whole issue of rejection by women as an excuse for carrying on certain types of violent acts has got to stop. And it sparked trending topics on Twitter. Yes, all women. That was a trending topic this past week, where women spoke very openly about acts of violence that they had to endure in the process of rejecting men's advances. And so I wonder if this debate right now, I mean, in this case, I think there was an element of both mental health and misogyny. But I'd really be curious to know what your thoughts are in terms of these types of killings moving forward. We also had a news out of Connecticut. A young woman rejected a young man for rejected him from being his prom date, stabbed her in the neck in a stairwell in their high school. And so we're seeing more and more cases. Earlier this week, 3 men shot at a woman outside of LA, actually. LA Times reported it because the woman refused to have sex with them. So is this an issue that we're just not really addressing with our young men right now? Or are we just going to kind of relegate everything to mental health? What role does this play?
I have to say, this is absolutely mental illness at its worst. And with all due respect, I do agree. I think we have misogyny is a problem in our society, not to minimize that. But there might be an element of misogyny present with this guy, with Elliot Rogers, but he is severely mentally ill, absolutely troubled and untreated. And again, I'm not a mental health expert, but if you listen to this manifesto, his last YouTube video, down the line, he mentions his hatred not just towards the women who rejected him, but he mentions his hatred towards men who are sexually active. I mean, that's a lot of people, and he hates everyone. And I think what the deal with this guy is that he's at an age where he's not an adolescent and he's not a man. He's kind of a young man, and he's got paths in life. He's got the path of finishing his education and leaving his parents' nest and getting a job. He's got the path of forming peer groups and networks of friends, and then he's got a path of developing attachment bonds, relationships with the opposite sex or even the same sex. And he fails at that. And where a normal person who is not suffering from poor mental health would deal with this as, okay, I'm a jerk. Nobody wants to be with me. I'm a virgin. How can I change that? How can I, change this, and not feel rejected in the future? He goes to his mental health or his mental illness, I think, makes this a colossal life and death situation, and he chooses death. And then you look to the tragedy itself and who he shoots. The first 3 victims are all men. His 2 roommates and then a visitor of one of the roommates are all knifed to death. And then he shoots the 4th victim, who's also a male, inside a convenience store. So I really don't see this as misogyny. I see this as absolutely mental health. I think that the guy is rejected, and his response to rejection is not the appropriate response. It's not the healthy response, and it's in fact his mental illness that is driving him to this tragic event. So a normal guy would say, well, how do I change?
Right.
It's one thing that I feel rejected, but I'm not going to go kill men that are sexually active
Right.
and women who don't give me attention, right? And so I think he's compromised by his mental illness. But and there's also the argument that misogyny is a form of mental illness. There's
This
that
is very
argument as
true.
well.
And not to say that what I'm about to say is what you were saying, but what I have found and what I think a lot of people in the media and the public alike have all been saying is that when these types of incidents occur, the natural inclination to, and I know this guy Elliot Rodgers, I think he was white and Asian, but the natural inclination for the media to immediately jump to mental health versus perpetrators of violence of other races, particularly Latinos or African Americans, is just so frustrating. What are your thoughts on, I think, the jump to mental illness for a certain privileged section of society versus that of maybe less privileged groups?
Well, I mean, I think
big question.
That's a very big question. It's a very historical question. But yes, I mean, and I think that's why in this particular case they're saying, well, it's misogyny because they're tired of the it's almost like being mentally ill is an excuse, and it's also it's like all the celebrities that we see who have cheated and gotten caught, and then they say, well, they're sex addicts, and so sex addiction is sort of the disease of the privileged,
right?
Because the person who can't afford treatment, at $50,000 a month is going to go to Salvation Army, you know what I mean? But they don't treat sex addiction in Salvation Army, so it's the same thing. It's the white guy who would never really commit a crime or kill a bunch of people. He must be mentally ill. But I honestly think that this guy, obviously he was seeking treatment.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And it wasn't the right treatment, apparently. But, I think he really was suffering. And it's tragic that so many people had to suffer.
It absolutely is. I think my last point on this is that many concerns have been raised about the fact that this type of incident really stigmatizes the mentally ill, who are much more likely to be victims of violence than perpetrators. And so, moving forward, I mean, how is this? I'm not going to say jump to conclude that somebody is mentally ill, but this constant view of a Colorado movie theater shooting spree and Santa Barbara shooting spree, like all these different mass killings are played out in the public eye. And what is this doing to victims of mental health and how we view them?
Well, I mean, I think if, I don't think that you can just claim that you're mentally ill and get away with that. You can claim you're mentally ill and, our justice system will require you to prove that you're mentally ill. So I think, to the extent that it might be an excuse, it's an excuse that has to be proven. But yes, it definitely stigmatizes the mentally ill. And I think it's just such a broad spectrum of mental illness. What kind of mental illness? Are we talking about the anxiety disorder of the South African athlete? Or are we talking about, somebody who's this compromised that his rejection leads to killing everybody because he hates everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy topic, and the discussion continues. And of course, news continues to come out, and more YouTube videos, a 140-page manifesto that this young man apparently sent to his parents. So we'll be following this story and this discussion, and that wraps up our show. Sara, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rahwa.
Today.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope to have you here again soon. Why don't you share with people your contact information, maybe your social media information, if any?
Sure. My Twitter is at Azari Law, AZARILAW, and my website is azarilaw.com.
Check her out. She's fantastic. You can reach me on Twitter at Rahwa, RAHWA. And that wraps up our show. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Justice is Served. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you guys again next week.
From producers Maria Menounos, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire BHL crew, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us at info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I'm your BHL announcer, Scipio. Instagram me at Planet Scipio. Thank you for tuning in. The views expressed here are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.
Thanks for watching Black Hollywood Live on YouTube. For more in-depth interviews and news, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to share your opinion in the comment section below here. See you soon, everyone. Bye.